Hey, everyone. Just a quick note. The story you're listening to is actually written by me. It's kind of like a short novel, so it might feel similar to the stories you usually listen to here. I'd really love to know what you think about it, if it's good, or if there's anything I should change or improve. I'm not an expert writer or anything, I just wanted to try it out and see if you'd like me to start posting more original stories too. Thanks for listening. The email arrived on a Tuesday, which should have been my first warning. Nothing good ever happens on a Tuesday. Subject: high-profile referral, confidential. I stare at my laptop screen, coffee halfway to my lips, as I read the message from Dr. Patricia Huang, the court-appointed psychiatric evaluator I'd worked with before. Usually, Patricia sent me executives with anger management issues or celebrities navigating public breakdowns. This felt different. Elena, I have an unusual case. Court-mandated therapy, 6 months minimum. The patient has requested you specifically. I can't say more via email. Can you meet me at Brennan's at noon? That last part made my stomach drop. Patricia never did in-person briefings unless the case was complicated. And requested me specifically was either flattering or terrifying. In my 8 years as a clinical psychologist, I'd learned it was usually the latter. Brennan's was a dimly lit bistro downtown where lawyers made deals and therapists violated HIPAA over overpriced salads. Patricia was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back corner booth, her perfectly coiffed silver hair catching the light. She had the look of someone who'd just watched a car accident in slow motion. "Tell me it's not a politician," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Worse." She pushed a manila folder toward me. "Adrian Cross." My hand froze over the folder. The Adrian Cross? The very same. Adrian Cross. Even his name sounded like it belonged in a noir film. For the past 3 years, he'd been the ghost haunting the city's criminal underworld, the architect behind the most sophisticated heists, fraud schemes, and cyberattacks the FBI had ever encountered. They'd finally caught him 6 months ago, and his trial had dominated the news cycle. 53 counts. Millions in stolen assets. Zero remorse, according to every journalist who'd covered the case. "Patricia, I work with anxiety and depression, not criminal masterminds. You also specialize in complex trauma and personality disorders. You published that paper on moral reasoning in antisocial patients." She leaned forward. "Elena, he asked for you by name. Apparently, he read your work. That was somehow more unsettling than everything else. What does he want?" The judge offered a reduced sentence if he completes therapy and demonstrates genuine progress. Cross's lawyer is sharp. He took the deal. But here's the thing. Patricia's expression turned grave. "I've evaluated him. He's brilliant, manipulative, and I genuinely can't tell if he's playing everyone or if there's something underneath worth salvaging." I opened the folder. Adrian Cross stared back at me from a police photo, sharp cheekbones, dark hair that looked deliberately tousled, and eyes that seemed to find the camera's presence amusing rather than intimidating. He was 34, according to his file. "Exactly my age." "Why me specifically?" he said, and I quote, "Dr. Voss understands that morality isn't a switch. It's a dimmer." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "That's from your paper." I felt something twist in my chest. Being quoted by a criminal mastermind wasn't exactly the professional validation I'd been hoping for. What if I say no? Then he'll request someone else, probably someone less capable. "Elena, I think you might actually be able to help him. Or at least figure out what's really going on in that head of his." She paused. "But I won't lie. This will be the hardest case you've ever taken. It might even be dangerous." I looked down at the photo again. Adrian Cross looked like he was in on a joke that no one else understood. "When does he want to start?" "Thursday, 2 p.m. Patricia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'll send you the full psychological profile. And Elena? Be careful. He's not like other patients. He'll know exactly which buttons to push." I left Brennan's with the folder tucked under my arm and a sense of foreboding settling in my bones. That night, I read Adrian Cross's file cover to cover. Orphaned at 12. Foster care until 18. Full scholarship to MIT, where he'd studied computer science and cognitive psychology. No prior criminal record until he was 31, when the first heist occurred, a cryptocurrency exchange, cleaned out with such elegance that investigators initially thought it was a system glitch. The pattern had continued from there, each crime more audacious than the last. Always victimless if you didn't count insurance companies and billionaires. Robin Hood for the digital age, some had called him. A sociopath with good PR, others argued. But what struck me most was a note in Patricia's evaluation. Subject demonstrates unusual self-awareness regarding his antisocial behaviors. When asked why he committed his crimes, he responded, "Because I could. Because the system is a game, and I wanted to see if I could win." When asked if he felt remorse, he paused for 43 seconds, unusual for someone with SPD, before answering, "I feel something. I'm just not sure what to call it." Thursday arrived faster than I wanted. I prepared my office the way I always did. Adjusted the chairs so neither felt dominant, made sure the tissues were within reach, turned on the white noise machine in the waiting room. My practice occupied the second floor of an old brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, far from the chaos of downtown. It had always felt like a sanctuary. At 1:58 p.m., my intercom buzzed. "Dr. Voss? Your 2 o'clock is here." I took a breath, smoothed my blazer, and opened the door. Adrian Cross stood in my waiting room, flanked by 2 federal marshals. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. No handcuffs, part of the deal, apparently. When he saw me, his mouth curved into a smile that was equal parts charming and unnerving. "Dr. Voss, thank you for seeing me." His voice was smooth, educated, with a slight rasp that suggested too many late nights. "I promise to be your most interesting patient." One of the marshals cleared his throat. "We'll be right outside, ma'am." I nodded and stepped aside. Adrian walked into my office with the confidence of someone who owned the space. He glanced around, taking in the diplomas on the wall, the bookshelves stuffed with psychiatric texts, the abstract painting I'd bought at a street fair, and settled into the patient's chair with unsettling ease. I sat across from him, notebook in lap, and did what I'd trained myself to do, observe without judgment. He was watching me with the same clinical interest I was watching him. "So," I said finally, "tell me why you're here." Adrian leaned back, fingers steepled. "Because a judge said I had to be, but also because I'm curious." "Curious about what?" "Whether you can help me figure out what's broken." He tilted his head. "Or if I'm even broken at all." "That's the question, isn't it, Dr. Voss? Am I a puzzle to be solved, or just a person who made different choices?" And just like that, I knew Patricia was right. This was going to be complicated. "Let's start with the basics," I said, clicking my pen, a nervous habit I'd never quite broken. "What would you like to get out of therapy?" Adrian's smile widened. "You mean besides 15 years off my sentence?" "Besides that." He considered this, his gaze drifting to the window where afternoon light filtered through half-drawn blinds. For a moment, he looked almost normal, just another professional taking time to think through a difficult question. "I want to understand why I don't feel things the way other people do," he said finally. "Or maybe I do feel them, but they're muted, like watching a movie through frosted glass." It was a surprisingly honest answer. Most patients in his position would have fed me rehearsed lines about remorse and rehabilitation. Adrian Cross was giving me something real to work with, which somehow made it worse. Reality was harder to navigate than performance. "Can you give me an example?" "Sure." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "When I was arrested, my lawyer cried. Actually cried. She'd been working on my case for months, and when the verdict came down, she looked devastated. I remember thinking, that's interesting. She's crying for me, and I'm not crying for myself." He paused. I wasn't happy or sad. I was just observing. "Does that make sense?" "It does." I made a note. "Have you always felt this way?" "No. Or at least, I don't think so." His expression shifted, something darker moving behind his eyes. I remember feelings from childhood. Fear, definitely. Anger. But they started fading around 14, 15. Like someone was slowly turning down the volume. "What was happening in your life at 14? "Foster care. 3rd home." His tone was matter-of-fact, but I caught the slight tension in his jaw. "The Hendersons. They were fine. Not abusive, not particularly warm. Just people doing a job." I knew from his file that the Hendersons had kept him for 4 years, the longest placement of his childhood. What was that like? Lonely. The word came out softer than I expected. They had 2 biological kids, both younger. There was always this invisible line. I was the foster kid, the temporary one. They fed me, clothed me, made sure I did my homework. But no one asked what I dreamed about. No one cared that I was teaching myself to code at midnight because it was the only thing that made me feel real. This was the crack Patricia had mentioned. The vulnerability beneath the performance. Coding made you feel real? Solving problems made me feel real. creating systems, breaking them down, understanding how things worked. The digital world made sense in a way people never did. He met my eyes. Still doesn't, honestly. Yet you chose crimes that affected people. Your heists, your schemes, they had human victims. Did they, though? Adrian's voice took on an argumentative edge, but not defensively. More like he was genuinely interested in the debate. I targeted billionaires, corrupt corporations, systems designed to exploit. The people I stole from had more money than they'd ever need. I didn't hurt anyone physically. I didn't ruin lives. You hurt your lawyer, the one who cried. He went still. Score 1 for the therapist. That's different, he said quietly. How? She chose to care about me. That's on her. Is it? I set my notebook aside. Adrian, I'm not here to judge your crimes. That's not my job. But if we're going to work together, you need to be honest about the impact of your choices. Not just the intended impact, the actual one. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, you're right. Amanda, my lawyer, she did care. And I knew she would be upset. I did it anyway. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling it further. That probably makes me a terrible person. It makes you human. A human with significant empathy deficits, but human nonetheless. He laughed, a genuine, surprised sound. You're not what I expected, Dr. Voss. What did you expect? Someone who'd be intimidated. Or fascinated in that creepy way where they want to study me like a bug. You're neither. I'm your therapist, not your biographer. There's a difference. I glanced at the clock. We had 30 minutes left. Tell me about the first crime. The cryptocurrency exchange. What were you thinking when you planned it? His entire demeanor changed. Energy flooded back into his posture, his eyes lit up, and I realized I was seeing Adrian Cross in his element. It was beautiful, he said. Not the money, I mean yes, the money was nice, but the architecture of it. Finding the flaw in their system was like solving an impossible puzzle. They'd built this fortress layer after layer of security, and I found the one loose brick. The one thread I could pull to unravel everything. How did it feel when you succeeded? Like I existed. Like I mattered. For 3 perfect days before they even realized what happened, I was the smartest person in the room, and the room was the entire financial system. His smile faded. And then it was over, and the feeling went away, and I needed to do it again. Dopamine-seeking behavior. Classic addiction pattern, but with an antisocial twist. You were chasing that feeling. Every single time. He slouched back in his chair. Bigger heists, more complex schemes. It was never enough. And somewhere around crime number 7 or 8, I realized I wasn't just doing it for the high anymore. I was doing it because I'd become the villain, and villains are supposed to keep escalating. It's what we do. Do you see yourself as a villain? Don't you? I considered this carefully. I see you as someone who made destructive choices, and is now trying to understand why. Whether that makes you a villain is a philosophical question, not a clinical one. Diplomatic. But he looked almost disappointed. Adrian, I need to establish something. I'm not here to absolve you, or condemn you. I'm here to help you develop the capacity for genuine connection and ethical decision-making. But that only works if you're honest with me and yourself. Even if I'm honest about not feeling guilty? Especially then. Guilt is learned, not innate. If you didn't develop that capacity as a child, we can work on building it now. But I can't help you fake feelings you don't have. He studied me for a long moment. You're interesting, Dr. Voss. You actually mean that. I do. What if I can't be fixed? What if this is just who I am? It was the most vulnerable question he'd asked yet, and I could see it cost him something to voice it. Then we figure out how you can live a life that doesn't harm others, even if you don't feel what they feel. But I don't think you're beyond help, Adrian. You're here, aren't you? You're asking questions. That's more than most people in your position would do. The alarm on my phone chimed. Session over. Adrian stood, stretching like a cat. Same time next week. Tuesday and Thursday, 2 p.m. That's the arrangement. He paused at the door. Dr. Voss? Thank you. I think this might actually be useful. After he left, escorted by the marshals who'd been reading magazines in my waiting room, I sat in the sudden silence and realized my hands were shaking. I'd just spent an hour with one of the most dangerous minds in the criminal justice system, and he'd thanked me. I pulled out my personal notebook, the one I kept separate from patient files, and wrote, Day 1. He's manipulative, brilliant, and possibly sincere. I have no idea which parts are real. This is either going to be the most important case of my career or the biggest mistake I've ever made. Then I went home, poured a very large glass of wine, and tried to convince myself I knew what I was doing. By our fourth session, we'd established a rhythm. Adrian would arrive exactly on time, make some wry observation about current events or philosophy, and settle into what I'd started thinking of as his therapy persona, still guarded but willing to engage. Today, he arrived with coffee. Oh, milk latte, right? He handed me a cup from the pretentious cafe 3 blocks over. I asked the marshals to make a detour. Hope that's not weird. It was absolutely weird, and he knew it. This was a test. Would I maintain boundaries or accept the gesture? Thank you, but I can't accept gifts from patients. I handed it back gently. Professional boundaries. Boundaries. He took a sip of what was apparently my latte.
Right.
So I can tell you my deepest traumas, but I can't buy you coffee. Therapy is weird. Therapy is structured. The weirdness is a feature, not a bug. He laughed and took his usual seat. Fair enough. So, what are we excavating today, doctor? I want to talk about your parents. The humor drained from his face. Of course you do. I'd been building toward this conversation carefully. Adrian had mentioned his childhood in fragments, offhand comments, quick deflections. But we couldn't address his present without understanding his past. Tell me about them. There's not much to tell. They died in a car accident when I was 12. I went into foster care. Standard tragic backstory. He was using his casual voice, the one that meant he was deeply uncomfortable. What were they like? Before the accident? I don't remember. You don't remember anything about your parents? Not much. He was looking at the wall behind me, not quite meeting my eyes. Flashes. My mom singing in the kitchen. My dad reading the newspaper at breakfast. But it's like remembering a dream. I'm not sure what's real and what I've constructed. That's common with childhood trauma. The mind protects itself by creating distance. I softened my voice. What do you remember about the day they died? His jaw tightened. Do we have to do this? We don't have to do anything, but I think it might help. A long silence stretched between us. I waited, patient. One thing I'd learned about Adrian: he processed slowly when emotions were involved. His brilliant, calculating mind needed extra time to navigate feelings. I was at school, he said finally. 7th grade. Math class. The principal came to get me, and I remember thinking I was in trouble. But then we went to her office, and there was a police officer, and she had this look on her face. Like she was trying to figure out how to tell a kid his entire world just ended. What did you feel? Nothing. At first, nothing. They told me my parents were dead, and I just sat there. The officer kept asking if I understood, and I said yes, but I didn't really. Not until later. When did it become real? At the funeral. Open casket. Terrible idea for a kid, by the way. I saw them lying there, and I kept waiting for them to wake up. Like it was a prank. Like someone would jump out and yell, "Surprise." His voice cracked just slightly. No one did. And I realized I was completely alone. This was the moment. The foundational trauma that everything else had built upon. What happened after the funeral? First foster home. The Martins. They lasted 6 weeks before deciding I was too difficult. He made air quotes. I wasn't difficult. I was 12 and grieving, and no one knew what to do with me. So they sent me back. Back where? Group home for a month. Then the Patels. Then the Hendersons. Then college, then. He gestured vaguely. Crime spree. You know the rest. Adrian, you were rejected repeatedly by the people who were supposed to care for you. That's not a small thing. It was fine. I adapted. By shutting down emotionally. He met my eyes then, and I saw something raw there. What was I supposed to do? Keep feeling everything? Keep hoping someone would actually want me? That way madness lies, Dr. Voss. So you chose numbness. I chose survival. I nodded slowly. This was the core of it, the protective mechanism that had calcified into something more permanent. Adrian had learned early that attachment led to pain, so he'd severed the capacity for attachment entirely. Or tried to. What about Amanda? Your lawyer. You said she cared about you. That's different. How? Because she didn't have to. She wasn't paid to pretend to care like foster parents. She just did. He looked frustrated, like he was trying to solve an equation that wouldn't balance. And I didn't know what to do with that. Did you care about her? I don't know. Maybe. I didn't want her to be upset. I thought about her reaction before I got caught, and it bothered me. Is that caring? It's a start. I leaned forward. Adrian, You've spent years convincing yourself you don't feel things. But what if you do feel them? You've just forgotten how to recognize them. He was quiet for a long time. Then, can I tell you something pathetic? This is therapy. Pathetic is encouraged. That got a small smile. Sometimes, when I'm in my cell at night, I imagine what it would have been like if they hadn't died. My parents. I'd be a completely different person. Maybe I'd be boring. Maybe I'd have an office job and a mortgage and complaints about traffic. But I'd probably be happy. Or at least, I know what happy felt like. You still could. Could what? Learn what happy feels like. It's not too late. He looked at me like I'd suggested he could learn to fly. I'm a convicted criminal, Dr. Voss. Even with good behavior, I'm looking at years in prison. What part of that is supposed to make me happy? The part where you figure out who you actually are, underneath all the damage. The part where you build genuine connections. The part where you stop running from yourself. I held his gaze. You're right. You can't have the life you would have had. But you can have a life. That's what we're working toward. A life behind bars. A life that's yours. Bars and all. He shook his head, but I could see I'd gotten through. Just a little. The armor had cracks. You're relentlessly optimistic, you know that? It's a job requirement. As he left that day, he paused at the door again, becoming a habit. Dr. Voss? Those memories of my parents. My mom singing, my dad with his newspaper. Do you think they're real? Does it matter? I don't know. Maybe. Then I think they're real enough. Memory isn't about perfect accuracy. It's about what we carry with us. He nodded and left without another word. I updated my notes. Progress. He's accessing genuine emotion, even if he doesn't recognize it. The grief is still there, 22 years later, unprocessed and calcified. But it's there, which means he's not as broken as he believes. Also, he remembered my coffee order. Classic attachment-seeking behavior. Either he's manipulating me or he's starting to care. Possibly both. Staying alert. That night, I dreamed about car accidents and open caskets and a 12-year-old boy waiting for someone to wake up. When I woke at 3 a.m., I spent an hour reading research papers on complex trauma and attachment disorders, trying to convince myself I knew how to help him. Trying to convince myself I wasn't getting too invested. I Googled you, Adrian announced at the start of our 9th session. I set down my notebook. Of course you did. Don't worry, nothing creepy. Just the professional stuff. Your publications, your credentials, that interview you did with Psychology Today. He tilted his head. You didn't mention you specialized in trauma because of personal experience. My stomach tightened. That interview had been a mistake, too much honesty in a moment of feeling like I needed to be authentic. I'd mentioned losing my sister to suicide when I was 19 and how it had shaped my career path. It wasn't a secret, but it also wasn't something I led with. That's not relevant to your treatment, isn't it? You understand loss. Real loss. That's why you're good at this. He leaned forward. Did you become a therapist to save people you couldn't save before? Adrian, we're not here to analyze me. Why not? You analyze me twice a week. Seems only fair. This was transference, the patient projecting feelings and patterns onto the therapist. It happened in every therapeutic relationship, but with Adrian, it felt more calculated. He was testing boundaries, trying to shift the power dynamic. Fair isn't the same as therapeutic. My job is to help you, not to satisfy your curiosity about my life. But you did, didn't you? Become a therapist because of your sister. I could have deflected. Should have deflected. But something in his expression, genuine interest, not manipulation, made me answer honestly. Yes. After Sarah died, I spent 2 years angry at every mental health professional who'd missed the signs. And then I realized I could either stay angry or try to do better. So I did. Do you think about her? When you're working with patients? Every day. Adrian nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. I think that's why you're not afraid of me. You've already lost the worst thing you could lose. What's a criminal mastermind compared to that? He was right, which was unsettling. I'd noticed it myself. Most therapists who'd evaluated Adrian before me had maintained a careful distance, treating him like a bomb that might detonate. I treated him like a patient. Because he was. Are you trying to make me afraid of you? No. I'm trying to understand you. You're the first person in years who's looked at me like I'm human. I want to know why. Because you are human, Adrian. That's not charity or naivety. It's fact. Even after everything I've done? Even then. He was quiet for a moment, then shifted gears abruptly. Can I ask you something weird? Weirder than Googling your therapist? Definitely weirder. He looked almost embarrassed, which was new. Do you ever think about your patients outside of sessions? Like, wonder what they're doing, if they're okay? This was dangerous territory. Countertransference, the therapist developing feelings toward the patient. I'd been monitoring myself carefully for weeks, trying to maintain professional boundaries while giving him the genuine connection he desperately needed. Sometimes, I admitted, when a patient is going through something difficult, yes, I think about them. Do you think about me? The honest answer was yes. I thought about Adrian Cross constantly. Not in a romantic way, thank God, but in the way you think about a puzzle you can't quite solve. I wondered if he was eating properly in prison, if the other inmates gave him trouble, if he was sleeping. I wondered if our sessions were actually helping, or if he was just performing for me. Yes. His eyebrows shot up. Really? You're a complex case, Adrian. Of course I think about your treatment. That's not what I asked. Damn it. He was right.
Fine.
Yes, I think about you. I wonder if you're doing okay. If you're using the coping strategies we've discussed. If you're actually processing our conversations, or just filing them away as interesting intellectual exercises. Both, he said immediately. I process them, but I also file them away. It's how my brain works.
But
He hesitated. The processing part is new. Usually, I just file. That's good. That means you're engaging with the material on an emotional level, not just intellectual. Is that what this feeling is? Emotions. He said it like he was discussing a foreign language. Because it's uncomfortable. I kind of hate it. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Welcome to being human. It's uncomfortable about 60% of the time. How do normal people stand it? They learn that the uncomfortable feelings come with good ones too. Joy, connection, love. You can't have one without the other. That seems like a design flaw. You're not wrong. We fell into a comfortable silence. This was happening more often, moments where the therapy felt less like work and more like actual conversation.
it worried me.
Not because I thought Adrian was manipulating me, but because I wasn't sure where the professional boundary was anymore. Dr. Voss.
His voice was softer.
Thank you.
For thinking about me.
No one's really done that since my parents died. Not consistently. And there it was, the thing I'd been trying to avoid acknowledging. Adrian Cross was attaching to me, forming the kind of bond he'd avoided for 20 years. It was therapeutic progress and a massive complication simultaneously. You're welcome. But Adrian, you understand that our relationship is professional, right? I'm your therapist. Once your treatment ends, we won't have contact. His face shuddered immediately. Of course. Professional boundaries. Got it. That doesn't mean I don't care about your progress. I do. But you're not my friend. You're not family. You're my therapist, and when I'm fixed or fixed enough, you'll move on to the next patient. His voice was flat. I understand how this works, Dr. Voss. Adrian. It's fine. Really. He stood up abruptly. Are we done for today? We had 20 minutes left, but I knew better than to push. If you need to leave, yes. He walked to the door, then paused. Of course he did. Do you know what the worst part is? I actually started to believe this was real. That you actually cared. But you just said it. Once I'm treated, you're done with me. Just like every foster family. Just like everyone. He laughed bitterly. I should have seen it coming. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I stood, moving toward him carefully. I mean that there are boundaries to protect both of us. I care about your well-being, Adrian. I care about your progress. But I can't be your friend or your family because that would compromise my ability to help you. Do you understand the difference?
No.
Then we'll work on it. Because this, I gestured between us. This reaction you're having? This is exactly what we need to explore. You're not used to people caring about you with boundaries. But boundaries aren't rejection. They're structure. He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see him working through it, that brilliant mind trying to categorize a feeling it didn't have language for. This is really uncomfortable. I know. I don't like it. I know that too. But I'm not leaving. Good. He sat back down. We spent the remaining 20 minutes unpacking his fear of abandonment, his confusion about appropriate relationships, and the difference between professional care and personal attachment. It was exhausting and necessary, and by the end, I could see him starting to understand. As he left, this time without pausing, I collapsed into my chair and stared at the ceiling. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. Not that he'd become dangerous, but that he'd become attached in a way that hurt him. And I'd let it happen because I'd been too focused on breakthrough to see the risk. I pulled out my phone and called my supervisor, Dr. Marcus Chen, who I consulted with on complex cases. Marcus, I need to talk about a patient. The criminal? Word travels fast. You're treating Adrian Cross, Elena. Of course word travels. What's wrong? I think I'm becoming too important to him. He's forming an attachment, and I don't know if it's therapeutic or damaging. Both, probably. Marcus's voice was steady, reassuring. Attachment is necessary for healing, especially for someone with his history. But you're right to be concerned. How are you maintaining boundaries? I'm trying. But he's smart, Marcus. He knows how to find the gaps.
Then you tighten them.
Clear language, consistent limits, and absolutely no flexibility on the framework. He needs to learn that care can exist within boundaries. That's probably the most important lesson you can teach him. What if I'm not good enough at this? What if I mess him up worse? Elena. Marcus's voice softened. You're a good therapist. Trust your training. And trust him to be resilient enough to handle the truth. After we hung up, I updated my notes with shaking hands. Major countertransference episode today. Patient expressed fear of abandonment when I reinforced boundaries. Had to navigate carefully between validation and maintaining professional framework. He stayed. He engaged. That's progress. But I need to be more careful. He's vulnerable in ways he doesn't fully understand, and I'm responsible for not exploiting that, even accidentally. Note to self, increase supervision. Maybe twice weekly. This is getting complicated. That night, I didn't dream about car accidents. I dreamed about Adrian Cross sitting alone in a cell, counting the days until he was released, and I was gone from his life forever. I woke up at 2 a.m. and couldn't fall back asleep. I was in my office finishing paperwork when my phone rang. Patricia Huang. She never called unless something was wrong. Elena, turn on the news. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up a news site. The headline made my blood run cold. Adrian Cross linked to new cyber attack. Heist planned from prison? No. I whispered. It happened 3 days ago, Patricia said. Major crypto exchange. 30 million stolen. The FBI says it has his signature all over it. My mind raced.
3 days ago was Saturday.
Adrian had sessions with me Tuesday and Thursday. He'd seemed fine. Engaged. Present. Working on his emotional regulation exercises. It's not possible. He's been in federal custody for 8 months. He doesn't have computer access. They're saying he planned it before his arrest. Set up automated systems, dead man switches, something. Elena, they're talking about transferring him to maximum security. Ending his therapy program.
No.
Patricia, we're making progress. Real progress. If they move him. I know. That's why I'm calling. They want to interview you.
Find out if he mentioned anything.
If there were signs. When? Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. FBI field office. She paused. Elena, did he say anything? Anything at all that might indicate he was still operating? I thought back through every session. Every word, every pause, every deflection.
No.
Nothing. He's been focused on his childhood, his emotional development. We haven't even discussed his crimes in depth beyond understanding his motivations. Then tell them that. And Elena, be careful. If they think the therapy is enabling him somehow, they'll shut it down. And his sentence will get significantly worse. After she hung up, I sat in the dark of my office, trying to process. Either Adrian had lied to me for months, playing an elaborate game while orchestrating crimes from prison, or he was being framed. Or, and this felt most likely, something he'd set up before his arrest had finally activated. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dr. Voss, it's Adrian. They confiscated my phone, but I convinced a guard to let me send one message. I didn't do it.
Please believe me.
I didn't do it. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I'll see you Thursday. We'll talk then. The FBI interview was exactly as uncomfortable as I'd expected. 2 agents, one older, skeptical, one younger, taking notes, in a sterile room that smelled like bad coffee and suspicion. Dr. Voss, in your professional opinion, has Adrian Cross shown genuine remorse for his crimes? Agent Morrison, the older one, asked. He's shown a willingness to understand the impact of his actions. Remorse is a process, not a switch. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. Adrian struggles with empathy and emotional processing due to complex childhood trauma. But he's working on it. That's what therapy is. Has he discussed his criminal activities with you? Only in the context of understanding his psychological motivations. I'm not his criminal defense attorney. I'm his therapist. Has he mentioned any ongoing operations? Contacts on the outside? Plans for after his release?
No.
Our sessions focus on his emotional development and trauma recovery. Agent Morrison leaned forward. Dr. Voss, do you understand that this man has stolen over $80 million? That his crimes have destabilized financial institutions? And now, while supposedly rehabilitating under your care, there's evidence he's still active. I understand the charges against him, but I also understand that correlation isn't causation. If something happened 3 days ago, we should be looking at what he set up before his arrest, not assuming he's running operations from a federal prison with no computer access. The younger agent, Chun, spoke up. We've analyzed the attack. It uses new techniques. Adaptations to security measures that were implemented after his arrest. How do you explain that? I couldn't. I don't know. But I know my patient. He's been forthcoming in therapy. If he was planning this, I would have seen signs. Would you? Morrison's skepticism was palpable. Or is he manipulating you, like he's manipulated everyone else? That hit harder than I wanted to admit, because it was a question I'd been asking myself since Patricia's call. It's possible, I said quietly, but I don't think so. They dismissed me after another 30 minutes of variations on the same questions. As I left, Agent Chen caught up with me in the hallway. For what it's worth, Dr. Voss, I think you're probably right. The timing on this is suspicious. It feels like a setup. He glanced back toward the interview room. But Morrison's under pressure. The media's having a field day with this. Criminal mastermind still pulling strings from prison. It's a bad look for everyone. What happens to Adrian? Depends on what they find. If they can't prove direct involvement, he might be okay. But his therapy program is probably done. Morrison will make sure of that. Thursday arrived. I'd spent 2 days analyzing every interaction Adrian and I had ever had, looking for signs I'd missed, manipulations I'd fallen for. I'd found nothing conclusive. Either he was innocent, or he was better than I'd given him credit for. He walked into my office flanked by 3 guards instead of the usual 2. His face was drawn, exhausted. When he sat down, he didn't make eye contact. I didn't do it, he said immediately. I know. His head snapped up. You know? I believe you. There's a difference. But it's an important one. I set my notebook aside. Talk to me. What's happening? They think I built some kind of time-delayed system. Set it to activate months after my arrest. He laughed bitterly. The irony is I did build systems like that. Just not this one. How can you be sure? Because I've seen the code. They showed me during interrogation trying to get me to confess. It's good, really good, but it's not mine. Different style, different logic patterns. Someone's mimicking my work. Who? I don't know. Maybe someone I worked with before. Maybe someone who studied my previous attacks. Maybe. He trailed off. Maybe what? Maybe someone who wants me back in maximum security. Away from therapy. Away from, he stopped himself. Away from me. I finished. I wasn't going to say that. But you were thinking it. He slumped back. These sessions are the only thing keeping me sane, Dr. Voss. The only time I feel like I'm moving forward instead of just existing. If they shut down the program, I go back to being exactly what they think I am. Just a criminal. Just a villain. You're not just anything, Adrian. You're a person trying to heal. That doesn't stop being true because someone else committed a crime. Tell that to the FBI.
I did.
I told them I believe in your progress. I told them what we've been working on. I leaned forward. But I need you to be completely honest with me. Is there any possibility, any at all, that something you set up before your arrest could have activated now?
No. I was careful about that.
When I knew I was going to get caught, I shut everything down, closed all the back doors, deleted the automated systems. I didn't want anything coming back to haunt me. He met my eyes. I wanted a clean slate. For this. For therapy. I believed him. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I was being manipulated. But I believed him. Okay. Then we figure out how to prove it.
How?
You're the criminal mastermind. You tell me. That got a small smile. If someone's framing me, they'd need to have studied my work extensively. They'd need access to my old code, my patterns. That's a pretty small pool of people.
Who?
My old crew. The people I worked with on the early heists. Most of them scattered after I was arrested, but... He paused. There's one. Marcus. Marcus Webb. He was my right hand on the cryptocurrency jobs. Smart kid, maybe even smarter than me in some ways. I taught him everything. Why would he frame you? Maybe he's angry I got caught, and he didn't. Maybe he wants me out of the picture permanently, so he can take over. Or maybe... Adrian's expression darkened. Maybe he thinks I'm going soft. That therapy is making me weak. Marcus always hated the idea of rehabilitation. He thought I should embrace being the villain. We need to tell the FBI. They won't believe me. They'll think I'm deflecting blame. He ran a hand through his hair. I need proof. Something concrete that shows it wasn't me. How do we get that? I'd need to see the actual attack code. Not just snippets, the whole thing. Compare it to my old work, find the differences.
He looked at me.
Think your FBI friends would let me do that? Absolutely not. You're a prisoner accused of cybercrimes. They're not giving you access to evidence. Then I'm screwed. We sat in heavy silence. I could see him spiraling, retreating back into the defensive cynicism he'd spent months working to overcome. What if, I said slowly, I looked at it. You're a therapist, not a programmer. I'm also someone with a doctorate who can read technical documentation. What if you taught me what to look for and I examined the code? They won't let you see it either. They might. Professional interest. Understanding my patient's capabilities. It was a long shot, but maybe. And I have a friend. From grad school. He works in cybersecurity consulting. If I could get him the code, he might be able to analyze it. Adrian looked at me like I'd just offered to steal the moon. You do that? Risk your professional credibility for me. I do it to find the truth. There's a difference. Is there?
Yes.
Because if you did this, Adrian, if you played me this whole time, I need to know. For my sake as much as yours. But if you didn't, if someone's trying to sabotage your rehabilitation, then I'll fight for you. That's what therapists do. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't deserve you, Dr. Voss. Probably not. But that's not how this works. Getting access to the code took 2 weeks, countless calls, and leveraging every professional relationship I had. Agent Chen was surprisingly helpful. He'd been right about Morrison using this as political leverage, and Chen seemed genuinely interested in the truth. My friend Jason, who did cybersecurity consulting for major firms, agreed to look at the code under strict confidentiality. What he found was damning. Elena, this is sophisticated work, Jason said over video call, his face pale in the laptop screen. Whoever did this knows their stuff. But there are inconsistencies. The base architecture looks like Cross's style, elegant, efficient, but the implementation is sloppy in places. Like someone trying to replicate genius without fully understanding it. Can you prove it wasn't him? Prove? That's hard. But I can provide evidence that suggests a different author. Style analysis, pattern recognition, that sort of thing. It'll at least create reasonable doubt. I took his findings to Chen, who brought them to Morrison. 3 days later, they arrested Marcus Webb in Montreal. He'd made a mistake, used some of the stolen funds to book a luxury hotel, and the crypto trail led back to him. When Adrian heard the news, he cried. Actually cried. I'd never seen him show that level of emotion. We were in our regular session and I told him about the arrest and he just broke. Tears streaming down his face, shoulders shaking, the kind of ugly crying that comes from releasing months of pressure. I thought I was going back, he managed between sobs. I thought I'd lost everything. Again. I handed him the tissue box and waited. This was important, letting him feel it, all of it, without trying to fix or contain it. I don't know how to do this, he said after a few minutes, wiping his face. Crying, I mean, it feels awful. It is awful, but it's also healthy. I hate it. I hate feeling this much. But he was smiling a little through the tears. Is this what normal people do? Just feel things constantly. Pretty much. It's terrible. I want to go back to being numb. No, you don't. He laughed. A wet, broken sound.
No.
I don't. That's the weird part. This feels awful, but it also feels real. Like I'm actually here, actually present for the first time in years. That's because you are. We spent the rest of the session processing. Not just the relief of being exonerated, but everything it brought up. The fear of loss, the realization that he'd started to hope, the terrifying vulnerability of caring about something. Dr. Voss, he said near the end. When you were fighting for me, getting the code analyzed, talking to the FBI, why did you do it? Because it was the right thing to do. But why did you care if it was right? You could have walked away, protected yourself. No one would have blamed you. I considered my answer carefully. Because I see you, Adrian. Not the villain, not the criminal, you. The person underneath all the damage. And that person deserves a chance to heal. I wasn't going to let someone take that away based on a lie. But I am a criminal. I did do all those things before.
Yes.
And you're working to understand why, and to become someone who wouldn't make those choices again. That's not erasing the past. It's choosing a different future. He was quiet, absorbing this. Then, I think I'm starting to feel guilty. About the frame-up?
No.
About everything. The heists, the people I hurt, the chaos I caused. It's like someone turned on a light, and now I can see all the damage. He looked at me with something like wonder and horror mixed together. Is this what remorse feels like? Yes. It's worse than the crying. I know, but it's important, right? Feeling this. It's essential. You can't heal without acknowledging the harm you caused, even if it hurts. He nodded slowly. I want to make amends. I don't know how, but I want to try. The money, most of it's still recoverable. Hidden accounts, crypto wallets. I could help them find it, return it. This was huge. This was the breakthrough I'd been working toward for months. That's a significant decision, Adrian. It would likely help your case, but it would also mean fully confronting what you did. Are you ready for that?
No.
But I think I need to do it anyway. He met my eyes. Will you help me? I don't think I can do this alone. Of course. That's what I'm here for. Over the next few weeks, Adrian worked with the FBI to recover assets. $63 million returned to various victims. It didn't undo the harm, but it was something. The judge took notice, reducing his sentence by 5 years. But more than that, something shifted in Adrian. He started talking about his victims by name, the companies, the people who'd lost their jobs or savings because of his actions. He wrote apology letters, knowing most would never be read or accepted. He volunteered for a prison education program, teaching computer literacy to other inmates. I can't fix what I broke, he told me in session. But maybe I can build something better going forward. Is that enough? It's a start, I said. And starts are important. One Thursday, 6 months into treatment, Adrian came in with news. I talked to Amanda, my lawyer. She's helping me set up a foundation.
For kids in foster care.
Tech education, mentorship, support systems. He was animated, energized in a way I'd never seen. I can't change my childhood, but maybe I can help other kids like me. Keep them from ending up where I did. Adrian, that's wonderful. It was your idea. Sort of. You said I could choose a different future. So I am. He paused. I've also been thinking about after prison. What I'll do. And I want to work in rehabilitation. Help other people like me understand their trauma and make better choices. Maybe I could even become a counselor or something. I know it's a long shot with my record, but it's not impossible. Difficult, but not impossible. And I think you'd be good at it. Really? Really? You understand the psychology from the inside. You've done the work. That's valuable. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his entire face. Thank you, Dr. Voss. For believing in me when no one else did. For seeing past the villain to the person. That's my job. It's more than that. You know it is. He was right. Somewhere along the way, this had become more than professional interest. Not romantic, not inappropriate, but deeper than standard therapeutic care. I'd become invested in his healing in a way that transcended clinical boundaries. You're right, I admitted. You've become important to me. Your progress, your well-being, it matters beyond professional obligation. And that's okay. Because it's also what you needed. Someone who genuinely cared. What happens when therapy ends? When I'm released? We transition. Maybe ongoing check-ins, if the court allows. Maybe you find a new therapist closer to wherever you end up. But Adrian, the work we've done, that stays with you. I'm not the source of your healing. I'm just the guide. You did this. We did this. Okay, we did this. That night, I updated my notes for what would be one of the last times. Patient has demonstrated remarkable progress. Developed capacity for empathy, remorse, and emotional connection. Making concrete amends. Planning pro-social future. This is what successful rehabilitation looks like. Whatever happens next, he's not the same person who walked into my office a year ago. The villain is still there. That's part of him, part of his history, but it's not all he is anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe I just helped him remember he was human. Adrian's final therapy session under the court mandate arrived on a gray November morning, exactly 1 year after we'd started. He was being transferred to a minimum security facility for the remainder of his sentence, a reward for good behavior and cooperation. After that, another 3 years, and he'd be eligible for parole. He sat in his usual chair, but something was different. Calmer, more settled in himself.
So this is it, he said.
The last official session. The last court-mandated one. But you can continue therapy on your own if you want. I can refer you to someone at the new facility, or we can arrange phone sessions if. I'd like to keep working with you, if that's allowed. I'd anticipated this. It's allowed. But Adrian, you should consider whether that's what's best for you. I'll always be associated with this period of your life. The prison, the trial, the early healing. Sometimes moving forward means new relationships. Maybe. But you're also the person who saw me at my worst and didn't flinch. That's not easy to find. He smiled slightly. Plus, you're the only therapist who's ever called me out on my bullshit with such clinical precision. That's true. I am excellent at that. We both laughed. Easy, comfortable. The relationship had evolved over the year, from wary adversaries to collaborators to something like genuine care, bounded by professional ethics but real nonetheless. Tell me something, Adrian said. That first session, when I walked in here, what did you think? Honestly, I thought you were terrifying, brilliant and damaged and possibly beyond help. I thought I was in over my head. What changed? You did. Session by session, you showed up. You did the work, even when it hurt. You proved me wrong about the beyond help part. I paused. What did you think? That first day. I thought you were either naive or incredibly brave. Maybe both. I thought I'd manipulate you, charm you, play the game until my sentence was reduced, and then disappear. He met my eyes. I didn't expect you to actually help me. I didn't expect to actually care. About therapy? About everything. You taught me that caring isn't weakness. It's the hardest, bravest thing a person can do. We spent the session reviewing his progress, the emotional regulation skills he developed, the cognitive restructuring around his self-perception, the practical plans for his future. It was professional, thorough, and bittersweet. As our time wound down, Adrian pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote something. For you. I know patients aren't supposed to give therapists gifts, but this isn't a gift. It's just something I needed to say.
He handed it to me.
Don't read it now. Later. Adrian.
Please.
Just take it. I took the paper and set it aside. Okay.
He stood and I stood with him.
For a moment, we just looked at each other. Therapist and patient, healer and wounded, two people who'd navigated something complex and difficult together. Thank you, Dr. Voss.
For everything.
For not giving up on me. Thank you for letting me help. For trusting me with the difficult parts. The guards came to escort him out. At the door, always at the door, he paused one last time. I'm not the villain anymore, am I? You never were. Not entirely. But no, you're not. You're just Adrian now. Figure out what that means. I will. After he left, I sat in the silence of my office and unfolded the paper. Dr. Voss, I'm not good at feelings yet, as you know, but I'm trying. So here's what I need to say. A year ago, I was convinced I was broken beyond repair. That the villain was all I could be. You showed me that was a lie I'd been telling myself to avoid the pain of trying. You taught me that healing hurts worse than numbness. That caring is terrifying. That remorse is a crushing weight. And somehow, impossibly, you made me want all of it anyway. Because being numb wasn't living. It was just existing. I'll probably always struggle with empathy. I'll probably always have to work harder than other people to understand feelings. But now I know it's possible. And that's everything. You asked me once what I wanted to get out of therapy. I said I wanted to understand why I don't feel things the way other people do. I think I finally know the answer. I do feel things. I just never learned how to recognize them.
You taught me that. So, thank you.
For seeing the person underneath the crimes. For believing I could change when I didn't believe it myself. For being exactly what I needed, even when I didn't know what that was. I'm not fixed. I'm not cured. But I'm better. And that's because of you. Adrian. P.S. I hope your next patient is boring. You deserve boring after me. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer, separate from the official files. Then I did something I rarely allowed myself. I cried. Not sad tears. Not exactly happy ones either. Just tears of release, of completion, of having guided someone through hell and watched them come out the other side. Epilogue. 3 years later. The email arrived on a Tuesday, still a day for unexpected things. Subject: parole hearing next month. Thought you might want to know. I'd kept in touch with Adrian through monthly phone sessions, watching him continue his growth from a distance. He'd become a mentor to other inmates, had spoken at several conferences about rehabilitation and criminal justice reform, virtually from prison, and had completed an online degree in social work. The foundation he'd started was now funding programs in 6 states. But this was different. Parole meant freedom. It meant testing everything we'd worked on in the real world. I wrote back, "I'll be there. If you want me there." His response came within minutes. "I'd like that. I'm terrified." That's normal. Fear is normal. Never thought I'd hear you say fear is a good thing. Fear means you understand what's at stake. That's growth. The hearing was in a bland government building that smelled like floor wax and nerves. Adrian looked different, older, steadier. 3 years of minimum security had been kind to him. He wore a simple suit, his hair neatly cut, and when he spoke to the parole board, his voice was calm. "I can't undo what I did," he told them. "I stole millions. I hurt people, damaged institutions, caused chaos because I was hurt and didn't know how to process it. Those are explanations, not excuses." He talked about his therapy, his restitution efforts, his plans for the future. He was articulate and honest, and, most importantly, genuinely remorseful. When they asked if he'd reoffend, he paused, that same thoughtful pause I'd seen 100 times in session. I'd like to say no, absolutely not. But I'm a realist. I have antisocial tendencies. I'll always be someone who sees systems and wants to break them down. But I've learned to channel that productively. To break down systems that harm people, not systems that protect them. I want to work in criminal justice reform. Use my skills to help people like me find better paths. The board deliberated for 30 minutes. When they returned, the chairwoman looked at Adrian with something like cautious optimism. "Mr. Cross, based on your exemplary behavior, your restitution efforts, and the strong recommendations from your treatment team, we're granting parole, with conditions." Adrian's face remained neutral, but I saw his hands shake slightly. "Thank you. I won't waste this chance." Outside the building, away from cameras and lawyers, Adrian found me in the parking lot. "I can't believe it worked." "You worked. That's why it worked." "What do I do now?" "I'm about to be a free man, and I have no idea how to be one." "You figure it out. One day at a time. Use the skills we've developed. Find a local therapist for ongoing support. Build your life." I smiled. "And maybe stay away from cryptocurrency exchanges." He laughed, that genuine, unguarded laugh I'd worked so hard to help him find.
Deal.
Dr. Voss, he stopped, searching for words. "I know we've talked about this ending, about boundaries and professional relationships, but I need you to know you changed my life. Saved it, maybe. You changed your own life, Adrian." I just held up a mirror. A very persistent, insightful, occasionally annoying mirror. The best kind. We stood there for a moment, 2 people who journeyed together through something complex and difficult, and ultimately transformative. "What happens now?" he asked. "Do we just stop?" "We transition. Maybe quarterly check-ins instead of monthly. Maybe you find a new therapist, and I become someone you email occasionally. Maybe we stay in touch in some form that works for both of us." I paused. "But Adrian, the work is yours now. You don't need me the way you did." "I know, but I'd like to stay in touch. If that's okay." "It's okay." 6 months later, I got another email. Adrian had been hired by a nonprofit working on criminal justice reform. He was living in a small apartment, had adopted a cat named Moriarty, ironic, I know, and was dating someone he'd met at a support group. "Life is weird," he wrote. "I'm weird, but I'm also happy. I think this is happy. It's uncomfortable and scary, and nothing like I expected, but I don't want to go back to how things were. So I guess that's progress." Also, Moriarty knocked over a lamp today, and I felt genuine distress about it. I think that's empathy, or at least property damage concern. Either way, therapy worked. I wrote back, That's definitely progress. Both the happiness and the property damage concern. I'm proud of you, Adrian. Keep going. And he did. Author's note. The story of Adrian Cross and Dr. Elena Voss isn't about redemption in the Hollywood sense. No dramatic third-act transformation. No complete absolution. It's about the messy, uncomfortable, imperfect process of healing. About the reality that people can change, but it takes work, time, and someone willing to see past the worst things they've done. Adrian will always be someone who committed serious crimes. He'll always struggle with empathy in ways that other people don't. But he's also proof that understanding the roots of behavior, processing trauma, and developing emotional capacity can shift someone's trajectory. And Elena? She learned that being a therapist sometimes means caring more than is comfortable, taking professional risks, and accepting that success doesn't always look like you thought it would. In the end, the villain learned to be human. And the therapist learned that sometimes, believing in someone's capacity for change is the most powerful intervention of all. It was complicated, but it was worth it.